I noticed you put the Pope on the graphic.
God.
Are we talking about the Pope?
Uh, I'm gonna have a hard. The Pope makes me so angry. Um, and I don't want to step on religion for this because there are Christians who we're on the same side many times, often, in fact, in this particular fight. And probably there's some people who identify as Catholic uh, that are on the same side. And I've never really viewed Catholicism as that different from Christianity. Like growing up, I have friends who are Catholic and they didn't. I just thought Catholic was like a different version of Christianity, pretty American. I never viewed that as a separate thing. I know some people think, Catholicism is very different, but I don't have anything against Catholicism in particular, except for the Pope, and except for this idea of papal infallibility. And I know a lot of people.
Sorry,
What?
Elva Cara says the Pope is like me, not Catholic.
Yeah, right. Look,
Okay, good.
I know infallibility doesn't mean that he's without sin. By the way, atheist, just hang on. I'm going to talk in religious terms for a minute. Um, the I know, like, infallibility, I know it doesn't mean he's without sin, but it does mean that the stuff he says about interpretation of scripture and his, like, doctrine is supposedly correct. You're supposed to be like, oh, this is what the Pope says about the doctrine. It's infallible, right? It's infallible. And I can't think of anything more dangerous. Um, he is a man. He is fallible. His interpretations are political. And I am sick and tired of the Catholic Church. I'm sick and tired of the Pope. Uh, the Pope is one of the leaders of the anti-Western civilization movement. The Pope is leading the charge. He's one of the grand wizards of the left. The Pope is one of the high priestesses of the woke, or priests of the woke. Um, the Pope. So this particular Pope supposedly was an anti-liberation theology back in the 70s, but he explicitly accepted all of its premises. He's just a shill. Honestly, if I believed in the devil, this is how I think the devil would come to earth. And I know this is going to offend Catholics, but like, if I believed in the devil, it would be the Pope. The Pope would be the devil. He would come speaking nice language, convincing Christians that this is the will of God, this is the word of God, and he would be saying absolutely horrific things, covering up pedophilia and doing all the things that the popes have done and the Vatican has done. It is disgusting. And here's the thing that I look. He's a shill for Marxism. The most evil ideology ever invented, ever, was from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs. It's one of the most philosophically corrupt, evil ideologies. It killed over 100 million people last century. And this guy is shilling for that ideology. And I am
Okay,
tired of hearing it. And I'll
so
show you why in a minute. But
okay, show me why. But this happens to dovetail nicely with something I just started watching. So my boyfriend is a fan of the show The Borgias, which I've never seen. You heard
I
of this
don't
show?
know.
It's an old series. It's almost 10 years old now. I think it's 2011 series, but it's a historical fiction drama. So it's based on actual people, but of
Mm-hmm.
course it's fictionalized somewhat. But it's based on the Borgia. Is it pronounced the Borgias family? The Borgia family. It's
Okay.
set in Renaissance Italy,
Like the
and
Vatican Borgias, like
yeah,
the
yeah. So it's
the bishops.
yes,
Okay.
and about it starts off. I just started it, but it starts off with this one guy basically buying his way to into becoming the pope,
Okay.
and everything about their family is corrupt. It's they're engaging in adultery, incest, bribery. I mean, it's just but watching it, so it's a fictionalized account, but a lot of it is based in historical fact. So it's kind of interesting. And for me, I don't know a lot about the Pope or the Catholic Church, and if you're, to watch, to give your mind a break, but watch something that's sort of rooted in history, that's
That sounds fun.
entertainment. Yeah, it's kind of fun, but it's definitely opened my eyes to the fact that, of course, any type of organization or system can be corrupted, and
Especially
especially
this one, especially a
yes.
top-down one with a charismatic leader, or just a leader. A leader, I like to call them leader beans because it reminds me of the Simpson episode where Homer joined a cult and he saved little beans on the windowsill, and then he would call leader beans because they looked like the leader. So, look, any organization with a leader bean who gets his little mobile and robes is like suspect, um, and who's considered infallible. The stuff he says about the doctrine is infallible. I mean, there is no more anti-Enlightenment idea than that. John Locke's, one of his greatest contributions was the dethroning of the idea of the divine right of kings, right? For centuries, you had this corrupt relationship between the church and the state. You had the church basically saying, well, they find the most effective thug, say that God ordained that thug as king. The agreement with the king is, I'll say that you're ordained as king. You have divine ruling power if you just promise to make sure that only my religion is the one that's allowed. Like, that was the relationship between the church and the state for a long time. And there was this idea that the clergy and the popes and the kings have different standards. There's different standards of judgment. There's different rights. They are different. It was an elitist, aristocratic class. One of John Locke's major contributions was to argue against the divine right of kings and say, look, we all have equal rights. There's not this one guy who's got equal rights. And I just, okay. He put out, I'll tell you why I'm pissed. I'll tell you why I'm pissed, because I know I'm just kind of pissed for no reason, it seems like. Okay, so.
I know it has something to do with China, right?
No, nothing to do with China.
No? Okay, but there's something to keep going.
Yeah, no. The Pope Francis, here's an article, and then we're going to actually look at some of the stuff. Pope Francis laments failures of market capitalism in blueprint for post-COVID world. He put together one of his one of his little, what do they call it? His papal teaching things. I forget what they're called. A scathing description of laissez-faire capitalism. And the Pope writes, our worst response would be to plunge even more deeply into feverish consumerism and new forms of egotistic self-preservation. So I'm just going to screw the article. We're just going to look at this for a second. Here's some pure evil if you're interested in pure evil. So it's the pure evil always starts with good words. Fraternity and social friendship. Ah, peace and love. The saint of fraternal love. I'm going to start quoting from the saint encyclicals. Thank you, someone just said. It's his encyclical. I'm going to start, it says it right here, encyclical letter. I'm going to start by talking about fraternal love. All right, a new vision of fraternity and social friendship. By the way, just as a reminder, you put a word in front of another word, an extra adjective. Social friendship. What does it have to do with friendship? Probably nothing. It probably has nothing to do with friendship.
It's social friendship.
That's right. So,
okay, what's that?
Look, this is long. I didn't read the whole thing. I can't bring myself to read the whole thing. But I'm gonna pull out a few highlights because there's a few things that really bother me. And what bothers me most, there's a bunch of things. There's a litany of things that I could list, but the one I'm going to pick on right now is this blaming of the free markets for everything. The rights of some to free enterprise or market freedom cannot supersede the rights of the peoples and the dignity of the poor, or for that matter, respect for the natural environment. If we make something on our own, it is only to administer it for the good of all. This is one of the most anti-Enlightenment ideas ever. So I know people have different definitions for the word capitalism. Like, some people hear the word capitalism and they think of like an oligarchy and all this horrible stuff. So I kind of I don't want to use the word capitalism necessarily. We can talk about why. Fundamentally, when I say capitalism, I'm just meaning private property. A system based on private property is recognition of individual rights, and private property is a corollary. So that's all it is, right? This is an anti-private property statement. If we make something our own, it is only to administer it for the good of all. Who defines the good of all? The effing Pope. That's who defines the good of all. The leaders. This entire system. This guy wants to be in power. He comes from a top-down system, a centuries old top-down authoritarian system where the leaders tell you what to do and you obey. That's his background. That's the entire structure of the Vatican. That's what they're based on. And this is what he wants. They define for the good of all. It's not Stalin, it's the Pope, but it doesn't matter who does it. Someone defines the good of all, and he wants to be in charge of that. He wants to be in the inner circle of people. He wants the Catholic Church to be on the board of directors of humanity to decide what's the good of all. That's what he wants. He doesn't want you deciding what's for your own good. You don't make the thing for your own. It's not yours. That's an anti-enlightenment idea. It is for the good of all. And now he's very explicit right here. This is the last thing I'll quote. And then he says, the right to private property is always accompanied. I like that he uses the word accompanied, not usurped by, but it's always accompanied by the primary and prior principles of the subordination of all private property to the universal destination of the earth's goods. What the fuck that means is beyond me. And thus the right of all to their use. So let's just pick this apart philosophically. This is philosophic evil. Evil philosophy. This is the most evil thing, one of the most evil things you can say. He is saying philosophic. This is why religion does not count as philosophy. He is saying, hey, there's a principle, right? The prior principle. There's a principle of the subordination of private property to the universal destination of the earth's goods. What the hell that means? I don't know. But the universal destination of the earth's sounds like Hegel, by the way. It sounds directly from Hegel, if I had to guess. But I don't know where he got that crap. What's the destination of the earth's goods and why is it universal? Well, guess what? That's for Mr. Pope to tell you because he has a direct line to God. So he'll tell you what the universal destination is. And thus the right for all to their fair use. So he's saying, yeah, property rights are fine, but they're subordinate to not property rights at all in any way. That's not how philosophy works. You don't have property rights, but they're subordinate to the Pope's whim because there aren't any property rights after all, and Marxism. That's what this is. That's what this is. And if you're a Catholic, I don't know what your recourses are if you're a Catholic. I don't know what you're supposed to do. I don't know what's allowed if you're a Catholic. I don't want to, I'm not trying to convince you to abandon your faith, although you may consider it. If you're a Catholic, I don't know how to push back on this, but reject this asshole. He is evil incarnate. He's evil incarnate, and he's doing it in the name of your religion. There's no better way to undermine the West than by walking around telling people that actually private property rights, individual rights are subordinate to the universal destination of Earth's goods and use by all. That's communism. Although that's actually maybe a little bit more authoritarianism because he's going to be the one to decide the universal destination. Trust me, right? He at least wants to be on the steering committee for the universal destination of goods. I don't know what the hell that mean. Like, what are Earth's goods? What's a universal destination? It's so intentionally vague that it means whatever he wants it to mean. It reeks of elitist authoritarianism. And I don't know how people contribute to this guy, give him the time of day. Don't see anyone who's defending Western civilization needs to hate the Pope. Maybe hate. You're not allowed to hate people. Fine. You need to not listen to the Pope. You need to oppose the Pope. This Pope is atrocious. And again, if I were religious and someone asked me where the Antichrist was on earth, I would point directly to this bastard. He's the Antichrist. That's what an Antichrist is. He comes in the name of your God, and he undermines all the value in it.
This is probably going to get you more riled up.
Sorry, I'm angry.
No, I like it. This is what I thought you were going to talk about. I just sent you two
Oh,
articles.
what
You
did he
can
do
pull up
now?
either one. Okay, so he has he declined to meet with our Secretary of State Pompeo,
Why?
and because Pompeo has said that the deal that they did in 2018 with China hurts religious freedom and
Wait, what?
supports China's religious persecution of like the underground Catholics and Christians.
Okay,
And I think he's right. I think he's right about that.
sure.
So for a while, from what I understand, you can read from this article so we get it right. But from what I understand, China was appointing their own bishops and were basically saying we don't need the approval of the church. And they had this sort of these two Catholic churches in China, or there are these two. There's the underground persecuted practicing Catholics and Christians, and then there are the ones who are CCP approved, the
Okay, so
public,
so
the
that's this
CCP
article
approved,
here, this
right?
New York Times article you're talking about.
Yeah, so you can read from that.
Rebuffed by Vatican, Pompeo assails China and aligns with Pope's critics. Pope Francis declined to see Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's demanding a harder Vatican line on China. Oh, so he wants China to be hard. He wants the Vatican to be harder on China. The
He
Holy
wants the
See said,
Vatican
"Go
to
ahead."
be harder on China because what the Vatican did in 2018 was they did this compromise, this deal with China where they said, okay, we're going to give you the authority to appoint for the CCP basically to appoint bishops.
Right, because the Pope doesn't give a. Wait, I just want to be clear about this. The Pope does not care about your religion. The Pope cares about the church being on the board of directors of humanity. That's what the Pope cares about. He wants the leaders of the large nations, the people in charge, the oligarchs. He wants to be in the room with them. That's all he wants. He wants Catholicism to have a seat at the table. That's what he wants. He does not care about the truth. He does not care about your Bible. He does not care about your religion.
Yeah, so in the comments, Azar Ahi says, yes, China is starting with the Muslims, but they're moving on to the Catholics next, already telling them to remove religious I can never say that word, iconography, and replace with Mao or Z iconography. Yes, so we've talked briefly about, and we got to do an interview with Jack Posobiec about, in which we briefly touched on the way that the CCP has been persecuting the ethnic minority Muslims in China who are called Uyghurs. And I do believe, from the little I know about it, from what I've seen, that they are going to start and have already started treating Catholics the same way, the underground Catholics, not the
Right.
ones who are state sanctioned.
Right. Well, keep in mind, China generally doesn't give a crap about anything except for obedience to China. So, like, if you're obedient, they're fine. But if you're in an underground church that's not sanctioned, you're by definition not obedient. So,
Yeah.
that's not okay. So you're showing this. He says the Vatican endangers its moral authority should it renew the deal. That makes sense, right? You would
Yeah.
endanger. Yeah, if you renew a deal telling the communists they can pick your bishops, assuming that's what that deal is, then that sounds like an undermining of your moral authority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scroll down a little and read some more because it talks more about the deal.
Um. Let's see. Well, which part do you want? An indignant Vatican took the article more as a calculated affront. Pompeo asked to meet the Pope, who turned him down. Clearly said does not receive political figures ahead of the elections. Blah blah blah. Let's see.
There we go. Up
For
there where it
decades,
talks about
China's
the.
communist government operated a Catholic church that it controlled, of course, insisting that Beijing, not the Vatican, had the power to appoint bishops, while persecuting priests and parishioners who answer to the Holy See. Okay? Under a 2018 agreement, China recognized some papal authority and the church accepted the legitimacy of bishops chosen by Beijing, a shameful retreat according to Francis's critics. Right. So Pope Francis this is a power thing, right? He's getting locked out of China, so he's like, oh, you want to approve some bishops and yeah, fine. I want a seat at the table. That's all this is. I want a seat at the table. It is that deal that the two sides are trying to renew. So this is the deal that Pompeo is critical of,
Pompeo.
rightly
Yes.
so. Um, Mr. Pompeo, who consistently promotes religious freedom and verbally thrashes China's leadership, talked to reporters on Wednesday afternoon about bringing the Vatican's moral authority to bear on China. He said American policy was to bring every actor who can benefit the people of China to take away the horrors of the authoritarian regime. Yeah.
So this
Okay.
what this earned him was being ignored by the Pope, and the Pope refusing to meet with him. This is a man who probably has political aspirations beyond Secretary of State, who, I think people would agree might run for president one day. And the Pope's like, nah, not going to meet with you.
Well, he's a wrong thinker. And he criticized the Pope. You can't criticize the Pope. This is all about it. By the way, one of the things the Pope writes in this letter is he talks about egoism. I mean, talk about, hey, pot, meet kettle. The hell? Jerk. You're egotistic. Oh, by the way, I'm God's voice on earth. All right, dick.
It's so funny today. Vero says, I don't know if this is true, I haven't looked it up, but Vero in chat says he did not even receive a Chinese bishop who wanted to ask him the same thing.
Of course not.